Fletch. Without further ado, the host of Morning Glory and the host of the Matty Johns show at Fox League. He's going to join us. Matthew is there. Hello, Matty.
Hey, Sugar. Missile, how are you, lads?
Mate, we need to get to one of the big items first. It could rock the sporting world. There's rumours getting around about this podcast of yours, Matty, where you invite people over to your own home to pat your parrot. What's going on there?
Mate, we've got a room full of wild exotic animals. We've got a zebra, who's Glenn, who's 20 and smells good.
20.
And we've got Gabriel and who's the other fella? Gabriel's good luck and what's the other fella's name? Anyway, he's the smaller one. He's bad luck. So we leave it up to people which one you want to pat. And I've got to say, when you pat Gabriel on the head, the parrot, every person who has done it has just come into an enormous amount of luck, success, you name it, money, everything.
Wow.
New relationships.
Wow. Did you pat Matty's parrot?
Yeah, I patted his parrot.
Yeah. I tell you what he did. He patted a parrot, and we went down to Collaroo Baths, and he broke the world record for 50.
That's exactly right.
What's it? What luck is? So I've been keeping an eye out, Matty. You've had Shannon, Noll on, and Mark Burris recently. What luck's in store for Shannon?
Well, Shannon was mate. He was really good. I mean, he's doing his 20th anniversary of Idol. He's about to bring out the album. 20 years of Idol, and we interviewed him about everything about Idol. It was very interesting to have a chat. The week after we got Guy Sebastian, so chatting to both of those guys separately about just the impact that had on their lives, sort of long term, but also immediate, because they went into it not knowing exactly what it was. And after they passed the audition, they put them all in a house together. So although they were watching the show, watching themselves back and like that, they had really no idea what was going on in the real world. So for them, the show could have been just tanking, and little didn't know that it was basically breaking all records as far as Australian television ratings. And so they just had no idea how big of celebrities they were until they stepped outside the house and went to that final opera house sing-off between Guy and Shannon. And everything went from there. And immediately, he just said, he's just a knockabout bloke from Condobolin. And he said, like, his mates didn't know how to treat him. Everything just changed. And the same with Guy. He said exactly the same thing. It was really funny. Shannon never really experienced a swing back. Yeah, he's had a little bit of criticism here and there, and there's been certain things, but he's never really suffered a big swing back or hit back or blow back, whatever you want to call it. Guy has. Guy was saying that the first year he went to the Arias after winning Idol, like he was lauded and people coming up and shaking his hand and wishing him all the best, congratulating him. He said by the second year he'd lost his cool. Like basically the sheen had gone off, and he said it was awful. He said that people were going up to him, his peers, people he really respected, and were just giving it to him. And most of it you put down to jealousy. But they were sort of trying to say, oh, mate, you did the easy way to success. Well, really, winning Australian Idol is not the easy way to success. And so, yeah, he went through all that. We interviewed Guy with a fella called Sam Fisher. And Sam Fisher is just an example these days of how you can explode in the music industry via TikTok and stuff like that. Now, he was a very, very talented guy. But a number of years ago, he released a song called This City. Now, This City, he said, he released it, whether iTunes, whatever it was. And he said it did okay. It had about, it was getting about 5,000-10,000 downloads when it was really peaking. He said he was quite happy with it. He said he was living in LA and a guy contacted him and said, just come around to my house. I want to show you something. Didn't know. Okay, what the hell? Went around there and he said, the guy said, like, there used to be this stream called Music Lyric. He said, now it's called TikTok, and I just want you to have a look at what's going on with your song. And his song was doing something like about, 1.5 million downloads a day.
Jeez.
And he said, like, just caught wind completely out of nowhere. Someone recommended it and passed it on, and within Very little. I think that song by now is something, I don't know, something like 600 million downloads.
So he's benefiting from that at all?
Yeah,
or?
do you get paid?
Yeah, to an extent. Didn't dig too deep into it about financial, but yeah, he's done okay, but certainly not compared to the old days. I mean, if back in the day you sold 600 million units, you'd be the richest bloke in your suburb. And so I don't quite understand the nuances of TikTok and how you monetize that and everything like that. I'm not sure about that, but he has done well for himself.
That instant fame piece, and people often say the instant fame, which is not really the fame may be instant, but the work's been put in for years to get yourself in that situation. John Aiken, who spent 27 years as a therapist, and he told the story where he just applied to, an email came through, applied to be the love doctor, so to speak, on maths. But that show has absolutely exploded, and he also didn't think it was going to be such a hit, and it just changes your life in an instant.
Well, Mark Burnett, he was a guy who he was in the army, special forces, left, and went, you know what, this stuff, the stuff that I did in the army and special forces, I reckon I could turn this into a show, and he turned it into Survivor.
Wow.
And then spawned into all these different things. He said, it was funny reading his book, he said when he brought out Survivor, he spoke to the network, how are we going to do this, and they were unsure. They said the best way to really launch it and will give you a clear indication whether people love it or hate it, we're going to show it straight after the Super Bowl, and did that. And of course it broke all records and just launched it in basically in the stratosphere as far as a world television show.
Last time I spoke to you, Matty, you had a bit of a soppy patient limping around your house, bunging on an injury. Has she turned that frown upside down?
It's starting to. She's starting to get it in around. Like, Missile, there has been a determination to find something wrong with it. But at the moment, X-rays, scans, ultrasounds, MRIs, and every time it's just shown the same thing. Ligament damage with a tiny little fracture, a little bone flake. But she's convinced there's more. Yeah. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm speaking quite brave and brazen at the moment because she's not here.
So the captain's challenge from Trish hasn't been going so well at this point.
It's not going good.
What about tonight? This is a biggie, Matty. Storm taking on the Broncos. How good's this?
It's going to be a great game. Melbourne are going good. They've and considering if you'd have told me at the start of the year they're going to not use Nelson for the first month or so, you'd go, wow. Because I looked at their pack last year and I thought their pack, and I've said this a few times, I thought their pack lacked power and speed, and the one exception to that was Nelson. But they've obviously had a very good off season. Some of those forwards, Liero's grown into himself. Joe Chan. He's really been a find for him. He's a clever footballer, Joe. Of course, Alex Chan's a young bloke who learned his football in the south of France over at Catalan. He's done really good. Yeah, they're looking red hot, and I'm looking forward to seeing what a difference, guys. When their spine's put in place, you got when Munster completes the team. Where so it's a big one tonight for Brisbane. I thought Brisbane was sensational last week. We spoke before about the Cowboys are a very, very hard team to draw a line through as far as form's concerned. They were 3-0 and they were getting enormous raps, people saying, geez, they're going good. But really, their victories had been covering up a lot of cracks. Yep. I thought their defence at times was really poor. I thought they were frivolous with the football. There were little bits of their great season with the Cowboys, 2022, and then there were little bits of 2023 in their football of late. But the Broncos put them to the sword last week. It just shows you what a massive difference an experienced playmaker, a top-line playmaker, and Adam Reynolds makes. Even when you haven't got Walsh there and you haven't got Haas, if you've got a good 7, covers a lot of shortcomings.
Well, here's Kevy Walters on the forward pack without Payne Haas.
Paddy was very good as our leader last week, but I thought he was really well supported by all the pack. And that needs to be the case every week if we want to get to where we want to go. I mentioned last week about Penrith and the good teams, and the Storm have been doing it for a long time as well. It's just next man in is stepping up, and it's a good mentality to have. and we're still learning about that. But I saw great evidence last week, and I expect to see that evidence again tomorrow night against the Storm.
Tell you what, he's one of the best to listen to, isn't he? Like, just straight shoot him, isn't he, Matty?
Yeah, he's really good, Kevy. You can see what he said there. He said, basically, you can see they're still working on their template, the Broncos. The Storm have got their system in place. That's the thing about the Storm, and the thing that's allowed them to keep winning, even without Munster and without Nelson there, is the strength of their system that everybody knows. The only team who does it better than them at the moment in the last few years has been Penrith. One of the, I think, underrated things in what has got Penrith to 3 comps in the row and heading for 4 has been the ability to absorb the loss of a central playmaker, and it's whether it be Jerome or mainly Nathan, and that is when a team loses their number 7. Now, what we're seeing at the moment with Parramatta is this: it puts enormous pressure on the coach because suddenly, it's out there. When you lose your 7, all the pressure's on the system of play. Does the system of play hold up without this player steering them around the park? Penrith does, because if you look at Penrith in 2021 when they lost Cleary and Luai at times, they put Burton and Tyrone May into the halves. Pretty unlikely pairing, but they just chalked up the wins, kept the kettle boiling. Then 2022, they lost Nathan for a fair stint and Sean O'Sullivan came in. O'Sullivan won 8 of the 11 games that he came into. And then, of course, Sullivan got pinched by the Dolphins. And went, okay, who are we going to search for? And Ivan gave a second crack at an NRL career to Jack Cogger, bringing him back from the Huddersfield Giants. Cogger heading into the finals, where he filled in for, at first, Jerome and Nathan. 8 out of 10 wins. And they don't win the competition without Jack Cogger, what he did on grand final night. And this year, of course, Nathan's out again with a hamstring injury. Who comes in? Brad Schneider. And it was only his first game out, right? There's a lot of water to pass under the bridge yet if we're going to talk about him being a success like the other blokes, but he's off to a good start. It just shows you the strength of the system is the most important thing, not the individual.
Here's Ivan Cleary, who's largely developed the hottest system in town at the moment on Brad Schneider.
Yeah, we identified Brad. He was played maybe 10 or 12 NRL games for the Raiders 2 years ago. We had a game out here against them, and since he was a new half, we thought we'd run big Billy kick-out at him all night, and thought he did a pretty good job, stood up there. And you just notice guys, and then you just sort of keep an eye on him, and he's pretty good at cup level, and then went over the Super League, and yeah, they got some good experience there, played in some big games, and stood up in some big moments as well over there. So yeah, it's always good to see any young player, where they're making a debut for NRL or debut for our club, and obviously Brad's playing a pretty pivotal position in our team, so he probably even had a little bit of pressure from the previous guys we've had. Sully and Cogs have done a good job, so yeah, for him to go out and play well, that's really pleasing, but he's got to do it again this week. So
well, I hadn't heard that story. Like to think that he sent Kick-Out at him all night, the kid stood up to the challenge. The story with Cogger, he goes, oh no, I remember Cogger played with Nathan in the Australian Schoolboys, and that seemed to work, and it's amazing how he comes up with that stuff, isn't it?
It is, and Joel, Missile, what you're seeing a lot is a tried and true way. When you see a guy, a lot of times younger guys, the high pressure of NRL football, basically, the high profile nature of it, which adds to the pressure. Some guys, they've got the ability, they've got the game, but it's just all too much. It all comes, when you first get in the first grade, isn't it, Joel? Yeah. You've got things coming at you a million miles an hour, and you're going, and it's hard to get on top of. Off the field is as tough on the field. And a lot of those guys, we've seen it before with guys like Blake Green, and we saw it with Cogger, and we've seen it with Schneider now, and we saw it way back with a guy like Gavin Miller. Struggling here, go over to England, have a year or two over there, then come back a completely different player. We saw it with Hastings, how he went over there and developed himself. It's a tried and true way of young guys who are just struggling with pressure here to go over and find their football. But, when you talk about systems of play and pressure, that's what I'm saying at the moment. With no Mitch Moses, there's just pressure on Brad Arthur. Pressure on for him to bed down this system of play that can accommodate or find a victory without his central playmaker. And that's the reason why they reached out to Mitchell Pearce, is that they haven't got a lot of depth in the halves. I don't think, looking at what they've done, I don't think they planned ahead for losing. I mean, no one really does, but I don't think they put an insurance policy in for losing like a Nathan. A Mitchell. So last week he put Dylan Brown into 7, who in my opinion isn't ready to play that role yet, and he had to bring young Blaze Tuolangi from the outside backs into the halves. Now, Blaze would do very, very well in the halves if he was sitting alongside Mitchell, in my opinion. Or he's sitting alongside a Nathan, or he's sitting alongside Adam Reynolds, because they would allow him just to run and react and do what he does. But playing alongside a player who is very similar to him made it very tough on the team.
Missile, I was talking to Matty earlier in the week about the Panthers system. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. So it's the closest thing you'll get. A lot of the Panther kids are NFL fans. And when you watch them play, in yardage set end to end, it's like, okay, it's the forward's turn here, line speed, let's go for a minute, rip in. Then they do the kick the opposing team. And the middle forwards almost in protest go, well, we're not even moving. You back 5 are going to bring it back up to us. So the back 5 just rip in. They make all these carries. Play 4, you'll often see Dylan Edwards. He'll put the hand up and say, boys, I know you've all got the kick chase next. I'll do play 4 and get a quick play the ball. So you guys get an extra rest. It's like offense and defense in NFL. Once you see this system...
Okay. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out now. So the forwards don't jog back to get onside. They let the...
It's almost like, righto, boys, you guys got a minute of line speed ripping in.
Yeah.
Once we defend this, righto, you backs, you've got this minute in front of you, rip in. And a lot of the Panther forwards carries are in the other half, not so much at the back end of the field. It's an amazing, simple system.
It is. It's I think how a team works is a bit like a jigsaw. You get all these pieces that are trying to fit, and the Penrith way of playing, as far as fatiguing the opposition, the puzzle's just right. So what happens is they're up, their defender set of 6, their big middleman. They drive downfield. They know that Dylan Edwards, Taruva, and To'o are going to bend the line back for them, bring the ball back to them so they don't have to retreat as far to get behind the football. Then what happens, they have a couple of hit-ups, and then in the meantime, Taruva and To'o go back to their edge and lead the kick chase. And lead the kick chase, get down there, do a job on the other kick return team, which means that their opposition has got to go... their forwards have got to get all the way back and behind the football. Now, if you multiply just that little snapshot there, if you multiply that by 50 times, mate, that takes an enormous toll on an opposition side. And if you watch in the last couple of years with Penrith start to blow teams away halfway through the second half because the fatigue just starts to tell. We saw it this year with the Parramatta game. All that yardage stuff I was just talking about combined with a really fast attack. And we saw it in last year's grand final against the Broncos. Broncos were flying. And then suddenly they completely fatigued and hit the wall.
Hey, Matty, have a listen to this and tell me when you hear this, the big red Corey Horsburgh is not going to explode this week. Play this, tourist.
Usually when our bench go on, we've been keeping the momentum over the last at the start of the season. But when Joe and Papa went off tonight, I got trust in those players to go on, but we lost everything. We lost all momentum. The whole game changed.
Yeah, he's lit a fire under him.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was funny, looking at Canberra the other day, it was like they went out there with that really hard-nosed attitude, played a good power game, but the Cronulla started so soft, started like their heads weren't in the game, that suddenly out of nowhere Canberra found themselves 18-0 up, and they almost, I reckon, they lost themselves there. Like if in my opinion, at the same time it was 2-0, I think Canberra would have stayed in their game. But the ease in which they got to 18-0, suddenly, there was that little bit that crept into them where they start to get a false sense of who they really are, and they're pushing the ball around to the edges and coming up with errors. That's not them. I think Ricky will go this week and say, hey, boys, that's not how we play football. We're not going to win enough games playing that style of football.
Matty, we've both got to go because we've got a break, but we appreciate your time once again. Quick word on Daly Cherry Evans. Who's the comparison we're trying to work out? You know what, for me, you mentioned Ricky Stewart. Maybe it is Ricky Stewart. Is that a fair comparison for Daly Cherry Evans? Where does he sit?
He's not as angry as Ricky.
Not as in style, because he's very much run and react. But it's hard. He's a really unorthodox halfback. I'll just say this about him: 310 games. I'll be surprised if he doesn't push 450.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
Wow.
I reckon he could. I see at least another 2-3 years in him.
Clip it up, put it on the YouTube. Matty Johns says Daly Cherry Evans,
There you
450.
go.
There it is.
Yep. So we asked the listeners, where is Daly Cherry Evans standing in the game? Is it in comparison to Ricky Stewart? Maybe it's somebody else. I don't know. But, Matty, thanks for sharing your time on the run home with Joel and Fletch and the missile today.
Thanks, lads.